Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Bryson Todd.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes, Marlene, it's a sunny morning. It's pretty much cool outside. It's clear skies, so I'm hoping there's no rain today.
Well, we'll see. It's been quite a mixture of sunshine and showers, so you'll be getting either one, I'm sure. Yeah. We'll find out from more weather forecast just what we can expect. But we were told it was going to dry up just a bit, and then there's more showers to come by the end of the week.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's really
nice. You got to temper the expectations during the rainy season.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. It's the hurricane season, just as a reminder to everyone out there. I hope that you've had your hurricane plans well put together, because we have to stay vigilant.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think to myself too, we are in the rainy season and we really haven't had that much rain. You know, the concern for us is we're on the extremes at this point when we talk about climate change and the impacts that we're feeling. It's either that we're seeing droughts or we're seeing extreme flooding.
Yeah, you don't know which one to expect.
Yeah. All right, but we have a lot to get into for today, so let's get started with our motivation for this morning. And that means it's time for Eye Opener. And our Eye Opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. We all have a story to tell, whether we publish it or keep it for just ourselves or family. Allow yourself to be heard. Everyone at one time or another has wanted to express his or her story. Writing a memoir to read privately, share with family or friends, or publish is an emotionally satisfying way to gain perspective on your experiences while sharing your unique voice. We've all experienced feelings and events in our lives that we are longing to write down. Giving in to that urge can give you an outlet for purging any frustration, anxiety, or long dormant feelings. No one else has to read it. Your memories captured on paper as descriptive scenes, sights, sounds, and scents may at first seem disconnected or incomplete. But rest assured that you possess the ability to shape your recollections into stories. If you're a young person, you can add to your life story as you grow older. Your writing may help family members know you better, or they may understand themselves more through reading about your experiences. More importantly, you are expressing yourself in a permanent way, giving a gift to yourself and letting your voice be heard.
Yeah. I automatically think about diaries and how people use diaries.
And how your siblings used to steal it and read it?
Exactly.
Or you were the brother that stole it and read it?
Yeah, I never ever wrote down my thoughts in diaries.
Oh.
I was never the person who expressed my
feelings. So you were the culprit, not the victim.
Yes, I'd say. But my sister she writes down every single day how her day is going, what she's experiencing, what she's thinking.
Yeah.
And it's also a way of relief and expressing yourself. And you actually get to monitor and evaluate your growth as you go back into those memories and you read through what you were experiencing at a certain point in your life and just how you've grown and blossomed into who you are today. And
Yeah.
so it's really nice to just jot it down on paper.
Yeah, and I think that's just it. I love that the eye opener talks about writing it, not necessarily sharing it. Some
Yeah.
people are really great at sharing their stories, and others just want to maintain that level of privacy. But the
Yeah.
practice of journaling is one that is often highly recommended, especially when you were trying to monitor your own emotions, monitor your development or your progress, because it gives you something to look back on and really have kind of a measure to go off on.
Yeah.
Some people have it with their Facebook because they just put everything out there. So,
Well,
you know,
see,
when they get
that's
those
where-
memories
that's
3
where
years
I
later.
vent a lot of my frustrations and sometimes where I just express myself. But I've also learned now how to do it differently. Yeah.
Differently how?
I don't post on Facebook as much as I used to.
No, it's, and it's, if you think back, I mean, I've been on Facebook a really, really long time, and if I could go back to someone like my first memories, definitely things I said then I wouldn't say now. And it has nothing to do with my job, it's just that the privacy level has changed so much, and not everybody has to know every detailed thought in my mind. It's up to you if you want to share that.
Yeah. I've started to find different ways how to share my opinions and how I think it would be more effective in creating some type of change that I'd want to see.
Yeah.
And so instead of perhaps posting now on Facebook, I would perhaps develop a proposal.
Oh, there
So
you go.
I tried to find a different outlet too.
Progress.
Right,
All right.
right.
But we got to get moving into our show for today, and it's time for us to find out about our weather. Francisca, good morning.
Good morning, Marlene and Brighton.
Good morning.
He gets a special pronunciation on his name there. I'm a bit jealous
I
right now.
appreciate that.
I love the name. I love the name.
Thank you.
All right, but we've been talking about this weather. I see sun, and I get fooled during the middle of the day because there's a downpour. What's happening?
Well, we're in the tropics. That's typically the tropics. But today we'll see generally fair weather. I don't think you will see that downpour.
Okay.
Because we are seeing less shower activity. The atmosphere has become drier, so we are going for isolated showers or isolated thunderstorms. And if that do happen, probably over the Maya Mountains. So I'm seeing that for today. But for tonight, as have been happening, the southern part of the country, especially Toledo, will see a little bit more than isolated showers.
Okay. And they had a flood warning yesterday. Do they have one today again?
No, that has been dropped.
Okay, good. Let's talk about the winds.
All right, so we'll be seeing winds out of the east, 5 to 15 knots, and producing light top seas. So that means beyond the reef, we'll see 2 to 4 feet waves.
Okay. And our temperatures?
Okay, seems a little high today, 89 along the coast, 94 inland, 82 up in the Maya Mountains, and then overnight, 81 along the coast, 75 inland, and 68 up in the Maya Mountains.
All right. And for the next few days, what can we expect?
Okay, tomorrow during the daytime, we'll continue to see generally fair weather, isolated showers or thunderstorms, but starting tomorrow night, we'll see an increase over the south and along the coast. And Friday, Saturday, yes, we'll be seeing shower activity increasing across the country.
So we got a rainy weekend ahead.
That's right.
All right, we have been warned. All right, let's talk about that tropical weather outlook. It's been quiet.
Yes, it is very quiet at this time. We don't have any threats in our area. Actually, they have Hurricane Center is looking at a tropical wave, but it's way by the Cabo Verde Islands. That's near Africa.
Okay.
But again, it seems like that won't develop into anything.
All right. Well, that's good news for us, too. We'll take the rain over a storm any day.
That's right.
All right. Francisca, thank you so much for that update.
You're welcome, and you guys have a wonderful day.
You
do too.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
There you
Well,
have
there
it.
you have it. It seems as if though it's going to be mostly scattered showers over the Maya Mountains, and I guess that means it's a great weekend to go to the beach.
Well, I don't know. They said the rain today.
Right.
The rain is coming this weekend. I was actually going to say the opposite. I think if you got laundry to get out, you should probably find some time to do that today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saturday laundry day doesn't seem like it's going to be very promising. All right, but we're going to get moving into our show for today, and we have a number of conversations lined up.
Yeah, the first conversation that we're going to be having this morning actually is with the Council of Churches, and we're going to be speaking on the legalization of marijuana as well as salary cuts.
The second part of our show, the KHMH is opening an oncology unit. They're going to be treating cancer patients right here in Belize City. A big development for them.
Right.
And we're going to get the details about it from the oncologist at the KHMH and how the SSB helped to contribute towards this unit.
And then we will be joined by Miss Kathy Esquivel, who is the wife of Sir Manuel Esquivel, to speak about his biography and just finding out more about his life.
All right, so that's what we have in store for this morning. We're going to take that break, but before we do, we got a birthday shout out, and someone is turning 76 years old today. Happy birthday to
Joyce Flowers. Joyce Flowers, we hope you have a wonderful day, a blessed one, and we wish you many, many more.
Oh, do enjoy it, Joyce. We love those photos. Former Miss Y there.
There you
All right,
go.
we're going to take that break now, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by the Council of Churches to hear their perspective on the legalization of marijuana and salary cuts. So please, stay tuned.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
Hola, Tony.
Hey, Kevin, ¿qué onda? ¿Qué pasa?
Nada, le vine a buscar porque necesito comprar más mercancías de vasos y platos desechables para mi tienda de comestible. Me estoy quedando sin esas cosas.
No, hombre, fíjate que desde el 15 de abril no puedo importar nada de eso. Y se me acaba de terminar todo lo que tenía hace como 3 semanas.
Oye, pero nunca has estado sin esas cosas. ¿Qué está pasando?
Mira esto. Esta es la nueva ley que prohíbe todo el uso de plásticos no reutilizables. Esos son vasos, platos, cucharas, tenedores, todo eso. Desde 15 de abril de este año no he podido importar nada de eso. A partir del 15 de enero del 2021 nadie puede fabricarlo. 15 de abril 2021 nadie lo puede vender. Y a partir del 14 de julio del 2021 si alguien te agarra con eso, te multan.
Híjole, no sabía eso. Necesito cambiar algunas cosas. Les diré a mis clientes por qué esas cosas ya no están disponibles. Gracias, Antonio.
Así es, cuídate.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYEBelize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we're back, and we are moving into our first conversation for this morning. As was mentioned earlier, today we are joined by representatives of the Council of Churches to discuss their recent positions that they have taken on the legalization of marijuana and on the salary cuts for teachers. And here with us this morning, we have Bishop Philip Wright from the Anglican Diocese of Belize, and we have Bishop Moses Ben-Gushef from the Belize Council of Churches. Good morning.
Good morning, Melanie. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, good morning.
It's good to be with you as always. It's been a while, but...
I know, in person especially.
In person especially.
Right? But it's wonderful to have you here and to be able to initiate the discussion on the church's perspective. So there was a press release that was issued last week, and I think it's important for us to understand what motivated the Council of Churches to come together to put out their position.
Yeah. I think, Marlene, the best place to begin is to look at all of this in terms of this relationship between church and state that we have cherished for decades. And it's a relationship really between the church and the government. The government being one government that is administered from time to time by different parties and so on. So we really see the relationship between church and state government. We value that relationship. We believe that relationship has served the country well. It has not been a perfect relationship, as I'm not sure there are any such, but it has been a good relationship. From the early days, we just had emancipation, from the early days when the church stepped in and opened schools, and right to this day when we're involved, we have a senator, we're involved in the administration, in the governance. We value this relationship, and I think whenever we see that relationship, how could I put it, sort of under threat, or if not under threat, not being understood properly, then we feel it's time to have a conversation again. I liken it sometimes to even the relationship we share with each other, husband, wife, whatever. Trust me, there comes a time, sometimes you have to sit down and say, you know what, let's talk about it. Do we still understand this thing the same way? Do we still feel the same way about each other? And those sort of, and I think this is what this is all about. Now it has been driven, yes, by some recent incidents. One being, as you said, the teacher salary situation, the marijuana situation. But I would rather we look at it really in terms of that broader context of the relationship between church and state and moving forward.
So on that point, tell me what is different with this particular administration and the relationship with the church versus what you had before.
I don't think there is a difference, really, to be honest. Because when you look at the history of the church and its involvement with the different administrations, for decades, we've always called out something if we're not comfortable. I think in this moment, given the nature of everything that is happening and the recent fight with unions and so on, it has maybe garnered a greater attention from the media, but I wouldn't say that the relationship is any different. But
is the engagement the same?
Yes, I would say that perhaps maybe the mode of communication is perhaps something that we need to look at again. How has the communication been? And you know, from communication, how do each party understand what was communicated? And then as communication continues, how that communication of whatever agreements were made, how that is communicated to the public. And so I think that aspect perhaps needs some looking at and some refining insofar as we are concerned.
No, I have been going over some of the archives, and I was going over particularly an archive from, I believe, last week or the week before, where you gave a statement to Channel 5 and saying that the churches were not consulted regarding a particular issue of the legalization of marijuana. Speak to us about the communications there between the churches and the government and what that's like.
Yes, and if I may, because this is not something, as I mentioned from the outset, it is not something that started with this present administration.
Yeah.
It is something that was there before. And so insofar as that aspect is concerned, it is one where previous administration, or at least the past administration, would have had some kind of dialogue with the church. And Bishop Wright can speak to that issue. But insofar as I know, that there would have been some level of communication at that point. There would have, and the communication would have been at least in some part to have at least consulted with the church as to the position that the government was taking, but also to have engaged the church. And but in recent statements, we have heard, especially what this present administration is putting forward. We have heard, for example, Well, you know, we really do not have to consult the church again because they had already taken a position previously. And what we are saying, but even if that is so, can you engage the church? Because it is also that we would have been proactive in a sense, and the discussion amongst ourselves would have continued. And there are some things that we have said, okay, there are some things we need to look at as a church.
But Bishop, could it not be argued that given the fact that in Belize, the church is given a prominent role in decision making in the role of a senator, which
That's
you sit
correct.
as, and you have that opportunity at that point to be able to speak out and even to have a firm position on any bill that is passed?
Yes, and that is so. But at the same time, even as I speak as senator, there's some consultation that takes place, and within the church, you know, we have we have our own understanding of some things too. And so, while I take a certain position as senator, I also have to be doing some consultation within my own body, and I think that consultation, because it is so active, you know, needs from time to time to be shared with the other body, which would be the government.
And one must bear in mind too that at the level of the Senate has never been the only level at which the dialogue has taken place. I mean, there have been times when the Prime Minister has come and met with us personally, and that's what we're saying, that this relationship is more than just one aspect, and when you see the overall relationship changing, let's say, for lack of a better word, then you do have to say, hey, let's talk about it. And by the way, I will say quickly, before I forget, we're hoping to have a meeting with the Prime Minister soon, and to talk through some of the concerns we've expressed, his take on it, and in a recent communication with him, for instance, both of us recommitted ourselves to the relationship. So we're not here to say this relationship is about to be severed, and we're just saying, as we move forward with these important issues that are affecting us as a nation, and if you consider the church a viable partner, a stakeholder, then we need to have open, honest, candid conversations about
Minister Fonseca has expressed the same publicly, that they expect that a subsequent meeting will take place. But let's dive into the issue at hand.
Sorry, but just before that though, seeing that we're at this point, and as Bishop has spoken in that regard, and you mentioned Minister Fonseca, that as mentioned that communication in the area of education, and I must go on record to say that because I have been a part of that, that the communication insofar as schools are concerned and education is concerned, insofar as the Minister of Education is concerned, you know, that aspect has gone rather smoothly. And we're happy for that.
So it sounds to be more of an engagement issue as well. But let's bring it back to the position that you've taken on the marijuana, the proposed changes to the bill.
Right.
What is your concern? What is the position that the church is putting forward, and why?
Well, I think a large part of the church's concern with the marijuana, the legalization, is we also look down the road. Now, we've heard of the financial justification. We've heard of other things being put forward to sort of justify why we need to go in this direction. However, we also know that, as with other drugs, as with alcohol, as with tobacco, we've seen sometimes the sad side effects of these things down the road. And the church is often at the forefront of that intervention. And so what you're seeing here in our statement on the marijuana issue is, we feel that further consideration, other things need to be brought into the fray in order for us to move in this direction. Bishop Benguishe will tell you, specific to our churches, we share some differences sometimes, within the council of churches.
I was going to ask about that as well.
For instance, the Anglican Church, speaking globally, have been okay with legalization for medicinal purposes. We've seen the wisdom, we've followed the science on that. We were not against the decriminalization, considering how it adversely affects some of these young boys and so on. Legalization, however, for recreational use, which is kind of where we're going, is a whole different matter. And like I said, we are looking at down the road and the effects on society, the effects on the young, and we're not convinced we have done a proper review of all of that to ensure that we can do this thing properly.
Let me just stick a pin there, because that's a critical point to differentiate. You speak of the recreational use of marijuana, and that is already allowed for. The 2017, the changes made in 2017 with the decriminalization of 10 grams of marijuana allows for any person to be able to possess marijuana and to consume it in their private homes. They have stipulations that they must be away from children, away from school zones, and it's already allowed for. What this proposal is what is being proposed at this time is making what essentially would be considered a legal contraband, giving it a process to be able to be used. So you can have it, but you can't buy it, you can't grow it, you can't import it. So it's illegal to get it, but legal to have it. And it's essentially filling that gap, because it doesn't make any logical sense.
You see, one of the things we have to look at, Melanie, is the whole, and while you're saying that, we have to also look at the whole aspect of, and though I hear you saying that, yes, there were some measures and there were some things in place before, in society, and especially in the thinking of rational people, we have to be careful not to begin to think about opening something as a Pandora box. And in society, what sometimes is said comes across, and I'm saying this because I have lived in other Caribbean countries. I have seen the effects of these things in other Caribbean countries. I have seen the effects of these things, especially amongst the student population of our countries. And what I'm saying is that, especially at that level, when it is heard, okay, it is okay, and it might be okay in one respect, and it might be said in one respect, but when we hear that word, it is okay, it is opening a Pandora box for anything and everything to take place. And that, for us as a church, also have to be kept in check, especially insofar as society is concerned, because in a sense we also speak for society. So while that can be said, we also have to be careful that in speaking about some things, it doesn't become a Pandora box for anything and everything. And that has to be a concern.
I think one of the questions one would like to have answered, to have an answer to, is what change would the churches like to see in terms of what was being proposed in order for the church to change its position?
I can speak to that. One of the areas that I think can be looked at, and this again is research that has been done and I continue to say in the Caribbean, and I know why I'm saying that, because I am more concerned about what affects us in Belize and what affects us in the Caribbean as a people. And while I might be concerned about the others, I want to begin there. That research has taken place, especially in Jamaica, where for the medicinal aspect, the drugs has done well. And I think as a country, if we can more move in that direction, that perhaps the church might be able to take a second look at some of these things.
Yeah.
And so, in the initial aspect of it, I was saying that perhaps it is, if we can move in that direction.
Strictly medicinal.
Strictly medicinal. It is something that the church would be able to look at.
Okay.
And I think when we talk about gaps too, sometimes it might be convenient to just look at the legal gaps. But we are seeing other gaps. We are seeing social effect gaps. And we're seeing the impact on families and individuals. We have a lot to learn from legalizing tobacco and alcohol, you know. We've been down this road before. And there are some lessons to be learned from even the current abuse. Because I am sure, I wasn't wrong, but I'm sure when tobacco and alcohol were legalized, there were some beautiful arguments put forward as to why this is. And we've seen the side effects. Trust me, we've seen the side effects. We're just saying that here we are again at a point where we're going to legalize a drug. Have we given enough thought, not just to the legal gaps, but to the societal gaps, the managerial gaps, the monitoring gaps, and so on. And we have to be real in our context as well, the context of Belize and the resources we have to police these things and to ensure equity. And we are just not convinced, I must say, at this point. That, so when you ask what do we may not yet have looked at that document to say, well, specifically we would want you to change this. We are still coming from a point of let's look at this as a society, as a community, and how it impacts. And let's make sure we understand those realities to then see how they could be properly reflected in a document that moves towards legalization. That's all we're saying, because remember, the church's perspective is always from what impacts people's lives. That's where we often enter the fray, you know. When people's lives, when families are affected, when an abused spouse calls, and so on. And we're not saying that the legislators and so on don't pay attention to things like that, but on the ground, I hope you can appreciate that those are issues that matter a lot to us.
You know, I think this is a conversation that requires looking at it from the holistic perspective.
That's correct.
And so it's looking at it from the benefits that it will bring to the economy. It's looking at the societal effects that it will have, but also looking at the criminal justice aspect. We're trying to push for criminal justice reform, policies in our country, and how we could sort of lessen the backlog that's affecting the criminal justice system, particularly the courts, and just the amount of cases that's showing up in front of the courts for possession of drugs, and the backlog that's happening with people in remand in the prison system. And so I think perhaps one of the arguments of the government would be that the legalization would now not have penalties be placed on people who cultivate the drug, and therefore you could enter the market. If you look globally, a lot of the movements across the world, I studied in Canada for 2 years, it's completely legal in Canada, and they found ways how to develop mechanisms to ensure that it's properly executed. But the only way to do that would be to start. And there is a starting point, and there are certain lessons that you will learn throughout that journey. So my question is, what's the position of the churches in terms of how this impacts, beyond just the effects, the psychological effects that it will have on individuals, but rather also the position, the impact it will have on criminal justice, for example?
Well, I think that's an important point, because we know in this country how strained the whole legal system is. And without careful consideration, we may want to ask the question, will this aid or not on that, even just on that strain on the legal system, for instance. So that's one aspect, I think, we certainly have to consider. Now, I hear you, when you say this could be the start of the process towards where we want to go. But true to what we are saying here this morning, well, let's have some more conversation about even this the start, and we don't feel we've had enough of a conversation to say, okay, we're at this point, fine, but let's have a serious conversation, not only about this point, but a little ways down. For instance, I'll tell you quickly, I listened to a show not long ago, not on your station, another station, and they were talking about marijuana. But I was taken aback a bit, for instance, when the talk seemed to be solely around smoking marijuana. And we know that this thing can enter the body in various different ways. Some young people showed me tableta, fudge.
Oh, yeah.
And I think even the science is saying that when it enters other than through the lungs or so on, it has a different kind of effect, a more drawn out effect and all. Have we brought all of that to bear on the conversation as well? And that conversation that night didn't touch that. So again, what we're saying here is, to your point about the holistic, the broader concept, yeah, let's have some conversation. Let's have conversations with the legal profession then.
But there has been, I wanna just at least clarify that there have been conversations regarding the type of marijuana and also looking at what it will contain. The whole reason there is a differentiation between hemp and cannabis, which is really what words we should be using, is because of talking about the different levels of, for example, THC, and those that can have a psychological effect on a person. Now, speaking with the professor that studies in medicinal marijuana use in Jamaica, speaking with the consultant that has been working with the government here in Belize, and even speaking to some of the government representatives, these are things that have been given consideration. So I suppose it goes back to your point that if you come to the table and you perhaps hear that there are considerations being made for the type of marijuana or the type of cannabis that will be cultivated in Belize, how it will be distributed, because the question of whether or not people use it, it seems moot. 2017 has passed. Decriminalization, prior to decriminalization, people were using marijuana. Since the decriminalization, people are allowed to use marijuana. Any person who's an adult who chooses to do so within the confines of what the law says, which is in your home. So it really just is about putting in the structures. So my question is it simply that you have been left out of the conversation and perhaps not allowed to understand the details of measures or careful measures that are being thought of and considered as they move forward? Do you think that is a part of the issue on the table here?
Well, in speaking to that issue, I'm certain that it is not only the church that might be concerned about that. There are, I can almost put my finger on it, that there would be other organizations who would be as concerned about some level of and what kind of dialogue is taking place insofar as it might affect them and what they do, whether it is with young people or it might be the psychological effect. I'm certain that counselors might also be as concerned about this. So for us, it is not only that, to put it that the church has not had that kind of consultation or dialogue, but we also, as you mentioned, let us look at the holistic aspect of it. And have we had the kind of communication with other organizations also to have been able to come to a proper conclusion? These are some of the things I think we're talking about. So it is not only consultation with the church as such, but I think other bodies would also be as concerned about some of the things. And as Bishop Wright has said, because how will it affect us in the long term? And those are some of the things I think that must be taken into consideration.
And if I may quickly, Bishop is right. We don't see ourselves as the only group, obviously, that needs it. But to the point we made at the start too, the conversation necessary, it must also not be one where we just sit there, okay, and you come and you justify to us why you want to do this, and lay out all your facts. And a true conversation is hearing the other side too, our concerns too. So yes, you bring the facts, you lay out all the medical stuff, and we appreciate it, and it might enlighten us. But I think we do a little reading too, right? But in a true conversation, it's also hearing the other side and their concern and the issues that they already seen, in spite of all the science, in spite of all the statistics and so on, because there are other voices out there, in addition to these experts, that hopefully are also being listened to. There are other voices, reputable voices, that are sounding caution, that are saying, you know, make sure you attend to these things as well. So it's about the relationship. It's about the necessary conversations and the nature of those conversations and the manner of those conversations that are also important to us, is what we're trying to say here.
I want to go even further in terms of the decision-making process, because I understand that the evangelicals might have one position and the other denominations might share another position.
That's correct.
How is it that the churches, what mechanism is there for the churches to come to a conclusion and not prolong that process of democracy?
Well, you said prolong the process of democracy, but actually we live in a pluralistic society. And everybody have their different opinions and understanding of something. So does the church. We, over the years, have had that kind of communication with each other. In the long run, I must say that we might not necessarily all agree to come to a certain specific decision. But what, for example, I feel comfortable with as a senator as I go to Senate is that I try to do as much consultation as is possible across the board with those to whom I answer to. Now, even in going to Senate and there might be things to vote on, I might not necessarily, as I seek consultation, I might not necessarily be able to get a general agreement across the board. But as I go, at least there is a fair amount of understanding. Having consulted as to when I go into the Senate, I know exactly what to be able to speak on and the decision to be made. And so I answer you in that way. We might not necessarily agree on everything, but in the long run, having had enough consultation with each other, there are some things that we can put on the board.
No, and it's very evident from the conversations. I mean, you brought a lot of clarity to what has been put forward in this press release, because it's easy to kind of just see a natural divide, for and against. But what I hear in this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not, you don't have a firm stance against this process of eventually legalizing marijuana. That's what I hear being communicated. You've mentioned an openness to medicinal marijuana, and you have expressed that if you could be able to come to the table and discuss what mechanisms and regulations will be in place, that there is a sense of openness for future decision making.
And I think that's a fair thing. We don't know what that future decision might be that we can agree to. But yes, there's nothing here which says absolutely not, you know, kind of thing. But we just don't feel we're quite there yet, and we need to have these conversations. We need to have these open, honest conversations in order to be able to get to that point. And if I may quickly chime in, you know, you're right. You know, I always remind folks, that's why we have denominations. That's why my good friend here is a Methodist, I'm an Anglican, Marlene is Roman Catholic, I think. Trust me, that will not change anytime soon. I think, I just think the Lord is going to come.
What, your religion? People do it all the time.
I just think that when the Lord returns, he'll have to somehow figure out how to. So, but Bishop is right as well in that, notwithstanding that fact, and we're not here to say, there's no reason why you also cannot come to the consensus and say these are the things that matter. Not always from a theological or strictly religious, but from a societal standpoint, from a human standpoint, from a health standpoint, I think there are grounds where even though we have denominational differences, there's no reason why the church can't come together and say, hey, no, this doesn't look good, or this is better, or so on. But if I may quickly add to Marlene, and that is why we are here to also talk about the relationship. I know it sounds like, because are we seeing in all of this parameters, boundaries, to this relationship? And if that is the case, then we also need to be clear about that.
Well, I wanted to ask that question subsequently, because you earlier, and I want to touch on the salary cuts issue as well. You spoke of the ongoing relationship you've had with the education ministry. Since you have put forward your position on marijuana, have you been engaged or sought to be engaged with the persons who are right behind the legislation? And in this case, it's the Ministry of Home Affairs and New Growth.
Yeah, we're hoping to indeed, yes. Okay. And we have certainly opened ourselves to that possibility, because we're not here just to talk about this. We really would want to do something about it for the good of the country. That's how we frame it. So yes. And so we're hoping in the weeks and months ahead, Bishop, to meet with the Prime Minister, to continue to meet with the Minister of Education, Home Affairs, and talk through some of these issues. And hopefully both sides can gain a greater understanding of each other's position, or where each other is coming from. And the hope is that out of that can come what might be called some kind of consensus or greater understanding. We know we are not the government. we don't make the laws. We don't. At the end of the day, that's their responsibility. We know that. We're not pretending that we don't. We're just saying, if you see us as a viable, worthwhile partner, stakeholder in all of this, as we say we do, right? Then that should also translate into dialogue and conversation and consultation and so on. That's basically what we're saying.
What's the feedback you get from the members of your church? Is it mixed?
Oh yeah, it's always mixed. Remember, the church is just a sample of society, and all the strong emotions that are visible in other places can become quite visible in the church. And so I think as responsible leaders, we hear them, we give space for that expression, but we also know that, like you rightly say, you can extend this thing forever and ever, talking. At some point somebody has to say, well, this is it. And so even with our membership, we listen, but at the end of the day, as leaders, as a good colleague of mine always says, just remember the church is not a democracy. You don't vote on what is sin and what is not sin. It's not like this is a popularity. But that does not mean you are a dictatorial leader, or
right.
You know what I mean?
At a certain point, you have to make a decision.
You have to make a decision. You have to take a position, and hopefully you explain it to your people, and you've had enough internal conversations as well, so that you get a sense of where people. And on these issues, trust me. I know for us, St. John's Cathedral, and we're not far from where the impact of the legalization of marijuana will come to the fore of, So I know some of these guys are members of the church, looking forward to it too. One the other day.
And where you're situated, and even further down, you see the impact of the turf war that takes place mostly because of the illegality of it.
And fair enough, exactly.
And that comes out of what can take place in time to come also. Because even as we begin to think about legalization of it, who are the people involved? Who will be the big players? As against, quote unquote, the small man. And that is already playing out in that aspect, turf war. And later on, when it comes on to the full legality of it, who's allowed to grow, who's allowed to produce, etc. That in itself will also become an aspect that we have to contend with in time to come.
That's a concern that we've heard quite a bit so
Absolutely.
far. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I don't want to lose all the time that I have with you speaking only on the marijuana issue. Let's talk about how you have also used this opportunity to speak about the salary cuts for teachers. I understand that you, the Council of Churches, felt offended by the words of the Prime Minister when they seem to be putting off the blame on the teachers' cut on the managing authorities. Let me get your response there.
Well, I think that's how we felt it when we first heard it, you know, because the Prime Minister did have an audience with us and explained the reasons behind why the cut was going to be necessary. And true to our own sense of why we do what we do, the concept of a shared sacrifice was a big part of us saying, yes, I think this is the way to go, because we are all in this together, and if we are to get out of it together, the economic crunch or whatever, we have to do it together, and part of that process is a shared. So we were made to understand that, you know, everybody is prepared to take the 10% cut. This is the way forward. This is necessary. There's no other option. We sign on to that. I think our
That's correct.
senator
Yes.
in the Senate got up and spoke to the shared sacrifice aspect of this thing. And then to hear things subsequently that sounded different than that, you know, that perhaps the 10% was simply something that was passed on, and that such a decision was made more at the managerial level rather than the ministry level.
So let's just explain it further. Basically, the government contribution towards the managing authority has been cut by 10%. And there's a natural understanding or an agreement that this would then be the 10% cut that the managing authority will then implement on teachers that work in schools managed by the churches.
Right.
And that is what is now being explained. And while I can appreciate that perhaps as a part of, and this is where again communication is an important aspect, because how you communicate what you want to communicate, I think, is important. And perhaps in fairness to those you would like to bring on board, it is important that as you communicate a certain aspect, because this is what you would like to get across, there should be clarity. And insofar as clarity is concerned, it is not that we have to go and read the fine print in order to find out about some things. The fine print should be upfront. And while we can appreciate of what was said after, there were some things that perhaps should have been said initially. And that aspect you just made reference to, so that then managing authorities would have been able to sit down and say, okay, we need to be able to properly work this out. But in addition to that, Eleni, bearing in mind that there are also some other aspects that I became aware of, whether in Senate or we would have heard of afterwards, that when the understanding we had of shared sacrifice that it would have been, as I said, across the board, everybody.
So what you're talking about is the fact that the CEOs and some members of the
that is
judiciary-
one, those are one set of people, and then we would have subsequently heard about, okay, increased salary for this person or increased salary for the other person. There's something not playing out right there, and so that would have come to our attention, and as it would have come to the public's attention, and we felt that it was something that we had to address, especially in light of the decision that we had taken as church leaders, that it was important in order to come out and to be able to clarify what we understood and what actually is our position.
Would you have had a different position in the Senate on the 10% salary cut if you knew there would be persons exempted or persons who got an increased salary?
I have always consulted with those with whom I need to consult. And based on the decision that we all make collectively together, that is the decision that I take to Senate.
Yeah. No, but if you knew that there were persons who were not going to get the 10% cut within the government system, do you think there would have been a different thought process in making that decision?
I'm pretty certain there would have been, because it would not have come across as shared sacrifice the way we understood it. Because we have lived this shared sacrifice too, not to some, but I have taken my own cut across the board in our church, for instance, just so that we didn't have to fire anybody. And we all decided we got to do this. So we were speaking strictly out of, as Bishop said, across the board, shared sacrifice. And so if something other than that was presented to us at the time, I don't think we would have been as comfortable saying, okay, yeah, go ahead, yeah, okay, we understand the exceptions. Now, in our upcoming conversation with the Prime Minister, we are hoping to indeed be enlightened and hopefully gain a better understanding. But we hold to the fact that we bought into this, if you will, under the understanding that this is shared sacrifice. This is something we're all going to have to go through in order to see a better day down the road. Yeah.
Bishops, we are just running out of time. This conversation is one that we could continue on and on for to have really and truly engaging discourse about. But we thank you for joining us this morning. Is there any last thing that you would like to say?
Yes, one of the last things that I would like to say, based on some other things that perhaps would not have come up this morning, but one of the things that we need to, and we have been taking note of and engaging, is constitutional reform. And that is something that I personally, as a senator, that at least in my closing remarks, I would like to also suggest that going forward, we will have to pay attention to, and for us as a church, along with some other social partners, we will continue to push that issue, because we feel at this point in time, as it involves some other things, that constitutional reform and constitutional review needs to take place.
Yeah. And I would just want to say we're just about a month or so away from celebrating 40 years as an independent, and I just feel that we need to begin to really show our maturity as a nation. 40 years in the making of independence, and part of that maturity has to mean that we can have this kind of conversation respectfully. We may differ, but we can still leave not being enemies or that I am against you and you against me, but just that we have had the opportunity to put on the table how we feel, and hopefully we can walk away from that better understanding each other and maybe having a greater appreciation of actually what we share in common. And I hope that what we are doing here, what we are trying to do with the administration and so on, is all part of this maturing, if you will.
That's correct.
As a people, because you and I know we live in a great and beautiful land, and we are thankful to God for that, and so let's show our appreciation.
Bishop Wright, Bishop Bengushe, thank you for joining us.
Thank
we
you
go
for
ahead
having
and
us.
we take our first break, and when we come back, we will be joined by members from the KHMH to speak about the opening of the Oncology unit. Stay with us.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
My name is Patricia Bennett, and I am a recovering cancer patient. I am 72 years young, and a little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that started a whole process, of which I began with chemotherapy, and I did chemotherapy for approximately 3.5 to 4 months. And then at the beginning of the year, as a matter of fact, January 28th, I had surgery, mastectomy, which the right breast was removed right here at Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital, of which I'm extremely grateful and proud of all the service and the attention and the love that I have received here from the Oncology department, and particularly Dr. Jacob, my oncologist, and all the nursing and medical team that work along with him. At which the third phase of my treatment, I received radiation in Merida. At that time, I had to travel, get special permission, and facilitated again by Dr. Jacob and the Cancer Society of Belize to receive permission to travel to Merida and to be able to deal with the radiation treatment. I had a little over 3 weeks of radiation treatment. I was referred to the radiologist in Merida, Dr. Petch, and he too provided excellent service, at which on a daily basis I received radiation for my cancer treatment. That went extremely well, and there were no problems, no side effects, and I am really grateful for all the service that I have received thus far. I can tell you that as a recovering cancer patient, I feel very proud of my association with the the oncology department of KHMH and the treatment that I have received and continue to receive, as they have really continued to follow up with my improvement and my ability to recover fully from cancer.
Thank you.
I'd like to tell everyone that having breast cancer is not a death sentence. Once you realize that something is not right, like if you do your own inspection and you feel that there is a lump, check it out immediately. Immediately go and have it verified or to determine what is the problem by a medical practitioner. In my case, I went to first my clinic, and then I moved on to getting a biopsy, and that biopsy was done right here at KHMH, and then I was referred to Dr. Yakab, having been determined that I had stage 3 breast cancer. Well, it's not a shame. It's anything that you should keep secret. I wasn't afraid to tell anyone, but to remain positive and to receive all the support that I can from my family, from my friends, from my church group. And that is most important, to remain positive and to have faith in God, number one, and also leaving it up to the professionals who will be able to tell you the way that we should go, the procedures that you would be following. And please be assured that the treatment of chemotherapy, sometimes one has side effects and it is difficult, but the team here at KHMH, in the persons of Dr. Yakab and his supporting staff in the oncology department, keep reminding you of all the things that you should do and the procedures that you should go through. And they are going to help in as far as possible to make the situation as easy for you as you go through the treatment. When it comes to surgery, again, being positive and remaining in the belief that you're going to get well. You're going to get well and you're going to beat this thing called cancer.
Thanks very much, ma'am. All right.
And there you have it, a testimonial from Patricia Bennett, who is a survivor, a breast cancer survivor diagnosed with stage 3, access treatment at the KHMH with Dr. Yakab. A great introduction to our conversation that we're having with both representatives of KHMH and the Social Security Board of Belize. We are joined by Dr. Ramon Yakab, who's the oncologist at KHMH, and Chandra Cancino, who is the General Manager of Corporate Customer Relations at Social Security Board. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Belize. Good morning, Channel 5.
This is I mean, listen, we are always happy to be able to look at some of the progress that we're making, especially in healthcare. And when it comes to dealing with cancer, there have been limited options for patients in Belize, and this is going to be a great step in the right direction. Dr. Yakab, let's just paint a picture as to what was happening before the creation of the unit.
Okay. Before, there were limited cancer services within the hospital. I mean, I have to mention that it was a little bit dispersed. So there were surgeries being performed, diagnoses were being performed, but what we did since 2 years ago, we've been making much more cohesion within the services to try and streamline the patient all the way from diagnosis all the way to palliative care. So in the initial stages, the first phase was doing the consultation, seeing if there is a real patient demand for services. During the second year, we noticed that the number of patients coming on a monthly basis just increased. We're actually seeing around 30 to 40 new patients diagnosed each month, and around 60 to 70 unique patients every month with a different cancer diagnosis. So with that in mind, management at the KHMH was very supportive in saying, you know what, we have to do something for all the patients. We have to improve and increase the services that we're doing. And we started doing chemotherapy on a one-by-one basis, initially at different areas at the hospital. And with the unit, we have a centralized area where we're doing chemotherapy. Now, with that being said, it's not only chemotherapy in the form of treatment that we're doing, we're accompanying the patient. If there's a suspicion of a cancer, or the patient is just recently diagnosed with a cancer, we're there with the patient through the journey, meaning we have a patient navigation system where we have a wonderful Nurse Bernard there, who's actively there with the patient, calling the patient, making sure that the patient is on time with the studies required. And after that, we decide treatment. We get everyone involved in the patient's management.
Yeah. So the relationship with Social Security Board, of course, you stepped in to kind of take what was a service being offered in different wards and different units and creating an oncology unit. Tell us about the choice to get involved here.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that Dr. Yakab is certainly one of Belize's unsung heroes. We've known him for many years at Social Security because he's always coming with his ideas and his plans for improving cancer treatment for patients in Belize. But, you know, he's not the doctor you want to be referred to. But he's been working so hard in bringing us to where we are today. So it started with a conversation, I think it was about 2017 or maybe 2018, when him and some of his associates from Global Oncology came with the idea of the oncology unit. Of course, it needed some financing, and so they prepared their plans and submitted to the CEO and the board, and that initial funding was approved. First, just for a little explanation on how it works for Social Security, we have a certain percentage in our legislation allotted to social development. So a small, I think it's 0.01% of your contributions collected from the employment injury branch go towards what we call a social development account. So it's not Social Security spending the people money. It's a legislated initiative or a directive that is in the law for us to be able to support causes such as these. We also support like the Kidney Association, the Palliative Foundation, the Gift of Life Foundation, etc. So that is how these monies are we are able to utilize these monies for initiatives such as these. So the board approved it back then, and that is where they started the procurement of equipment. Now that was in May, when the pandemic was actually in its full force, and that is the time when, you know, borders shut down, and we were accustomed to going to Merida for cancer treatment, etc. So everybody was kind of shut into Belize, and so it was kind of like hitting the ground running and trying to serve provide service for these people that were literally, you know, needed the stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where Dr. Jakob kind of picked it up and started the unofficial opening of the unit. And now fast forward to today, it's now gotten to the point where they are, he can explain it a little bit better, but where they want to now have the availability of medications, which is the chemotherapy medications and I guess other medications that go along with the the treatment of the chemotherapy treatment available for patients. And so Social Security is contributing to that as kind of a startup, and then they will then sell the medications at a very reasonable cost so that persons can have, then they kind of have like a revolving fund so that they are able to be a little bit more sustainable to provide the services.
Develop that self-sustainability.
Right, but it's the initial startup, you know, that.
In terms of the access to services, because we know that the treatment for cancer patients, it could be very costly. What's that looking like in terms of people who need to access these services?
When we compare it, for example, to traveling abroad or private services, it's much more affordable. And I mean, being able to get the medications through the hospital, through Social Security, through NHI, makes it much more affordable. The cost is much more reasonable for the patient. So we can actually target a larger population.
Because when patients are going abroad for treatment, let's say I'm going to Merida for chemotherapy, you know, I have to pay for the hospital bill, I have to pay the treatment, I have to pay for somebody to accompany me, that person has to stay in a hotel, they have to pay for food, you know, maybe I'm not employed, and you know, so you see a lot of persons out there seeking funding to quote unquote go to Merida for get treatment. So we are now saying, well, you don't need to go to Merida anymore. You know, you can get the same level of treatment, the same level of care, or even better, right at Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital. You know, and I think that's a big relief for patients when you get that terrible diagnosis and you need to go forward with your treatment.
And some of the challenges start from diagnosis. You know, being able to access a biopsy to be able to know whether or not what they have is cancer. How far have we come in being able to offer care for cancer patients at all stages, from where the suspicion of cancer exists to, as you spoke of earlier, end-of-life care?
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing at the hospital, again, if we have a suspicion, we liaise with the necessary doctors to get the cancer diagnosed. Either if it's a breast cancer, we will refer them to interventional radiologist. If the patient has a suspicion of a colon cancer, we refer them to the gastroenterologist within the system. We generally discuss patients' cases to make everything much more closer in terms of reaching a diagnosis. In terms of the pathology reading, that's generally done through ministry, through central medical lab, or patients have also preference of doing it private if they have the need. But we generally have a time lapse of around 2 to 3 weeks where we generally get results for pathology results. After that, at the hospital, we generally do all the staging tests that are generally required, either CAT scans, either x-rays or ultrasounds, whatever the need may be. So we're talking about a month or less to establish a diagnosis and adequately stage and already tell the patient you need to do this in terms of treatment. Now, the treatment will be dependent on the type of cancer. If it's surgery, again, we generally have a multidisciplinary team meeting where we discuss the patient's case along with the different doctors, surgeon, anesthesiologist, internist, and say the best plan for the patient. If it's surgery, if it's chemo, and if it's radiation, well, we generally liaise with a regional counterpart to refer the patient. And for the patients who unfortunately have an advanced cancer, who we know the curative intent may not be there, we liaise with the Belize Hospice and Palliative Care Foundation. We do palliative care at the hospital on an outpatient basis, but once the patient might need home care, we liaise with the foundation, who generally assists with that part. And again, I must mention that that partnership has been done in part through Social Security Board, through the NHI program, where our patients are having that level of medical care at their homes when needed.
Now, the cost of treatment, surgery is one option. When it comes to chemotherapy, who subsidizes the cost for that? Because it can be very expensive.
Yeah. The hospital, there is a service fee. There is a service fee. In the meantime, most of the medications, well, we don't really have it available. Ministry does assist us in getting the permissions required on a patient-by-patient basis. But most of the time, it's the patient that has to spend out-of-pocket money to get the medication. Now, that has two limitations. The changes in price will vary depending on where it's gotten. And even if the medication for any reason can't be found, well, we know that the prices might just increase. So that limits the patient's access. One, they have to be going to get the medication most of the time. It's sourced abroad. Now, having the medications within the hospital in a bulk, getting it through one of the programs, for example, through NHI, will ensure that medications that are being gotten are at an adequate price. So it's both affordable and accessible.
And that's the next step in the goal, which is because being able to have a space and kind of a designated area where if you have cancer and you're getting treatment or diagnosed or any service, that's one step. But access to medication is critical as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how SSB has helped to formalize this unit. Is it just a space created and equipment, or is it also assisting in some of the supplies that are necessary, like the medication?
Yeah, well, it's both.
Okay.
Like I said, they had we had like a little handing over, because at the time when it started, or when it was actually became operational, was in the midst of COVID. So we had a very short, brief handing over ceremony, and the work started immediately for Dr. Yakab. I think he has statistics of since then to now, they have seen over 800 patients in the unit. And so, you know, they're working with what they have there. As he said, at this time, most patients have to procure their own chemotherapy medications, and then they administer it. But now, with the support that we are going to, Social Security is going to provide, they will now be able to have to start the procurement process for the medication. So the patients, that's one less thing that the patients will now have to worry about. And so the board was very amenable to that sort of support to the community, because you know you can't go, you don't access these services unless you have to. But when you have to, it's one less thing that you need to worry about. I think it's the St. Jude's Hospital that always says you should only be worrying about living.
That's true.
You know, so you know, we're trying to support that as much as we possibly can. So that's the step that we are at right now. And then I think we're about to sign a memorandum of understanding of how the procurement process, etc., for the medications will take place.
I think about 3 weeks ago, the KHMH was declared to be back in emergency mode because of the COVID-19 pandemic. How has this impacted the unit?
I mean, no, the unit continues to work. The reason is that cancer in itself, the patients diagnosed with cancer are high-risk patients, yes, but we do have the adequate protocols for them. And COVID is here. It's been here for over a year now. And we can't limit ourselves with the treatment that other patients require, and cancer is among these ones. Prognosis is dependent on time. So we have continued services for cancer patients at the hospital, even throughout the COVID pandemic, even through the emergency mode.
Dr. Yakab, you have to explain these numbers. 800 patients in 1 year?
It's the 800 is a little bit over a year. It's going for a year and a half, 2 years. But the numbers are just increasing. We're actually seeing 30 to 40 new patients per month. And
is it localized? Is it from just this region, or is it from all over?
It's from all over. The hospital has become kind of like a hub for anyone who has a suspicion or who is recently diagnosed with cancer. We have all the community hospitals, all the regional hospitals referring the patients to the KHMH for evaluation. So with that in mind, we generally have a clinic open during the course of the week. Our services are Monday to Friday.
Do you still
He's
see...
the only oncologist in Belize.
I know,
Yeah.
and you know, I agree with you. Unsung Hero also works closely with palliative care. I mean, you're with patients, you know, till they pass, if that's what has to happen. The question I have though is, are we still seeing mostly preventable, treatable cancers?
Yes, I mean, the most common ones are breast cancers, which we can detect early. Colon cancer, if we can detect early. Cervical cancer, and that is preventable.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, out of all the cancers, the one that we can prevent is cervical cancer.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the one among the most common ones and the one with the most advanced stages that we're seeing. So that is...
What percentage would you say of the new patients that you're seeing are preventable and treatable cancers?
Roughly around 50%, 50 to 60%, yeah.
And I know that in terms of prostate cancers, men don't like to get their prostates checked. Are we seeing like there's an increase in men who are showing up to get their prostates checked?
Yeah, the thing is that we have that culture when it comes to men that they generally seek medical attention until symptoms hit. That's the reason they're going to go to the ER. That's the reason they're going to go to their primary care physician. They're not really doing screening. Most of the patients that we have with prostate cancer have a stage 4 prostate cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's prostate, breast, cervical, colon.
Colon and lung.
And lung cancer.
And lung cancer.
Interesting.
And we're seeing all the different types of cancer, but those are predominantly the ones that we see generally on a daily basis. Breast cancer accounts for roughly 40 to 50% of our consultations.
Wow.
Are people coming in early for late stage diagnosis?
I'd say that around a little bit, half to 2/3 might be coming in with either an early or a stage 3 cancer. We have that 25% there, 30% that do come with, with an advanced or stage 4 cancer.
Dr. Jacob, speak to us about what you envision for the next, for example, 3 to 5 years coming from the unit and the services that we will be providing.
Okay, for the, in 3 or, I mean, looking out towards the 5-year point, what I'm looking at is, one, we're going to be needing a larger space. Because this will, the cases of cancer will increase by numbers. That's because population is growing, so the numbers will increase. 2, we're hoping that medications will be much more accessible for us to meet the demands. 3, we have to start talking about radiation. Yes,
Right.
we're depending on our regional counterparts, but I think it's time to start thinking about having
There's no radiation in
access.
Belize.
No, we have to refer all the patients abroad. And that limits, because most of the time it also comes with out-of-pocket expense. So if the patient can't afford it, he or she won't go. So I think having that service here available. So in the next 5 years, I think those are the 3 things that we have to look out to, having increased services.
And what's the relationship with the Dangriga Cancer Center?
Well, we do refer patients. We have, we generally refer 1-to-1 case basis.
Okay.
And I generally refer especially patients for coming from that geographical area, from the Toledo district, from the Stan Creek district. And I also offer it to patients, and it's a patient preference. I generally refer them.
Okay.
So we have that relationship. And if they have if they require me to evaluate any patients, they will do so too, and I'll gladly see the patients here.
Yeah. And the future of this relationship, we know Social Security. No, but usually, you know, I realize that you develop relationships with organizations and especially help them to move further along with their goals.
Well, like I was explaining to Dr. Jacob, Social Security is limited by by the legislation in as much as we can support these organizations, because it's only a small percentage that the law allows us to utilize for these types of so Dr. Jacob came last year and he came this year again.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as you said, it's a partnership that we have developed, and, you know, looking forward, if there's any way Social Security, and I think the reason the board looked favorably on this type of support is because it's going to improve the quality of life of Belizeans.
Right.
And the Belizeans are the same contributors that contribute to Social Security, and inadvertently these are the same persons that will end up, you know, becoming ill when you get older and will need the assistance. So it's really a direct benefit to the Belizean public and to contributors on a whole. So let's see, Doc, let's see where it goes.
Certainly something we would like to see in terms of amendment of legislation for these types of initiatives.
But I mean, for others as well who are watching, they know that the oncology unit is there, that there is a plan for growth and expansion because there is a need for increased access to services. So we hope that people who are looking for partnerships will also know that you're there at the oncology unit, ready with the plans.
Well, we get a lot of, because a lot of persons who, even though we don't provide, Social Security doesn't provide medical expense, we don't pay medical bills for persons that are not injured on the job. We get a lot of requests for assistance, for financial assistance and support. And I would say a large percentage of those are for cancer patients. And so we have seen the need over the years for the service in Belize. And so that also drove the reason. So now those patients that are asking for support, they can now be referred, you know, locally and get the best treatment that they can get here in Belize.
All right, Dr. Jacob, of course, we'll give you a final word here. Of course, we know that you would love to work yourself out of a job, because that would be ideal. What would you say to the Belizean public understanding our cancer realities?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is we have to detect early. I mean, listen to the NGOs, the Belize Cancer Society, the different branches, listen to the information that they have. We have to detect cancer early, especially when it comes to the most common ones. And once you're diagnosed with a cancer, or if you have a suspicion of cancer, don't be afraid to seek medical attention. That is a taboo in itself. We've had patients that may have had symptoms for over a year, and they're afraid of what people may say, and they're not going in for medical attention. Don't be afraid. And we're here to help, I mean, in whichever way we can. I think
All right. Well, thank you both for coming in and telling us all about the partnership and the work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And with that, we'll take a break.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Miss Kathy Esquivel, who will be sharing about the biography of Sir Manuel Esquivel. Stay with us.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
If you are ailing due to a chronic disease and are left permanently invalid before retirement age, you may want to check if you qualify to receive invalidity benefit. The invalidity benefit exists for persons who are unable to continue working due to permanent illness. To qualify, you must be under 60 years old, must be sick for 26 consecutive weeks and certified to be medically unable to perform any type of work, must have at least 5 years of paid SSB contributions and at least 5 paid within the 3 months leading up to your illness. If you do not qualify for the invalidity pension, you may be eligible for the invalidity grant. Want to know more about invalidity benefit? Visit our website or contact any of our offices to have someone assist you.
2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected.
Okay everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Been drinking all night, feeling so high, better not drive, won't even try.
Been drinking all night, feeling so high, better not drive, ain't gonna try. Been drinking all night, feeling so high, better not drive, ain't gonna try. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. People die every day, I'm not going with ya. I'ma find my own way, I'm not going with ya. It's okay, I'll wait. Even good people make mistakes. I don't wanna realize when it's too late. Drinking and driving is never safe. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. Been drinking all night, feeling so high, better not drive, ain't gonna try. Been drinking all night, feeling so high, better not drive, ain't gonna try.
And welcome back. We're joined this morning by Mrs. Esquivel, who will be speaking to us about the biography of Manuel, Sir Manuel Esquivel, with a memoir from Mrs. Kathy herself. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
No, this is such an interesting, I look forward to reading through this book because for so many years doing history courses and doing social studies courses, we have not had the opportunity to learn more about Sir Manuel Esquivel, who has been our Prime Minister on two separate occasions from 84 to 89, as well as from 93 to 98. So speak to us about what really and truly inspired you to say, you know what, this is the time for me to write a biography about my husband.
A lot of people
through the years, have been saying we need a biography. And I approached a few people, and they all said, yes, yes, we need it. But no, I can't do it. And then gradually people said, but why don't you do it? So I did. And I thought it was important because Manuel has very many qualities and skills, but one of them is not self-promotion. And history is written by the people who write it. So if you allow other people to write your history, then that is the history that gets written. And so we thought it was important to have his history as he wants it. Now other people can have different ideas, different memories, but this is his.
And that's the question I had, the level of consultation that you've had with him as to what would be incorporated into the book.
Okay, so actually one of the impetuses for moving ahead was I went to a workshop given by Godfrey Smith on nonfiction writing. And he concentrated particularly on biography and memoir. And I found it very useful. And one of the things because we discussed, you know, the mechanics of it, and he recommended using a recorder, which is common practice. So I bought a recorder, but I never had any success really using it, and so I just went back to the old-fashioned discussion and writing notes. And so obviously because he was always accessible, I didn't have the same problem as maybe other biographers would have. And so I did an outline, and then we just discussed, and then every time that I had completed a section, I would discuss it with him to see if there were things that needed to be changed. So it took a long while, but actually it was an interesting period because it means that you sit and you have things to talk about and remember. And so, it was a good time.
Well, as his wife, you were a witness to his entire process.
Right.
But very often, what you will know will be a different perspective from what others would have experienced. What would you say is your point of view?
Well, I mean, I can give an example.
Tell us.
Manuel's very even-tempered. He never shouts, he never curses. And a lot of times people don't even know when he's upset, but I do. And so when there was a time when there were press conferences when the press deliberately tried to needle him and get on his nerves. And people didn't realize that he was irritated, but I knew he was irritated. So I think that gives a kind of point of view. Why I decided to incorporate the memoir, again, in some ways you have to blame Godfrey Smith. Because in discussing it, he actually lent me a book by Rachel Manley, Manley's daughter, her memoir. And I thought at the time, well, you know, I was involved. Not in government decisions, but in being there.
As the support system.
And supporting most of the time. No, in supporting and trying to be of help. So, and I am very interested in policy. I mean, that's something I'm interested in. So not that I ever determine policy, but we would sometimes discuss policy. And his point of view and mine aren't always the same. And one important thing I learned from him when it comes to policy is you've got to be very careful about introducing a new benefit. Not because the benefit is not warranted, but having given it, you can never take it away. And so you really have to think about the long-term results of especially economic results. And so sometimes you think a policy is good, but then when you look at the long-term implications, and that was something he always thought about, the long-term implications.
Does the book take an angle that is more so about his public life as the Prime Minister of Belize, or does it also look at the private?
Yeah, it starts from childhood, actually.
Okay.
It starts from childhood. It goes through his experience as a physics teacher. And many, many people still say, oh, he was my high school physics teacher, and he's in math, and he's the one that, you know, so he did have a profound effect. And then it goes on to how he became involved in politics. As Jules Vasquez told me just recently, his father always said that Manuel is the most unlikely politician because he doesn't seem to want the things that a lot of politicians want. He didn't want power, money, lots of women, or if he didn't act on it. And I know that because the press would have loved to catch him, and they never did. So he was an unlikely politician, but people saw in him a seriousness and an ability, and that's, so there's a story of how it became involved. And then the story of being in government, and as he himself will tell you, and as almost any politician could tell you, keep your enemies close and your friends close. Because very often it's more difficult to deal with the people who are supposedly on your side than the people who are on the opposing side.
Did you get any pushback from him at all in what could and couldn't be included in the book?
No, because as I said, we discussed it all along the way.
What would you say is perhaps one of the interesting stories that you have included that will really shine light on the Manuel you knew rather than the public?
Okay, well, if I can just give one. One time, a consul came, you know, people come and give their credentials and whatever. So this consul came and he gave his credentials, and as he was leaving, he left an envelope, and then he went back to Mexico City. And when the envelope was opened, it had a lot of cash in it. That consul was brought back from Mexico City and given back the envelope.
And nobody ever knew?
No. I mean, it wasn't made public. I don't know who the consul was, but I know that that happened. And so to me, that epitomizes who he is. So it wasn't a flashy, look how I've got integrity. It was a true, from the heart, no. Because he always said, you know, when people want to do something and want to corrupt you, they don't come right out. They come with something that really doesn't look, it's just a little iffy, but it's no big deal. But once you've done A, then B follows, and C. So he was always very careful not to get to A.
Why don't you speak to us about the title of the book, Still Waters? What inspired
Still waters run deep. That's the whole point. A lot of people have underestimated Manuel. And because he's quiet and he doesn't shout and carry on, people have thought that he's a pushover. And throughout his career, a lot of people have thought that they could use him because he's a pushover. And then they got disappointed because he's not. He won't shout at you, but neither will he just fall in with whatever you want to do.
Now, I was kind of skimming through to see, covering perhaps one of his most challenging times politically was the decision for the retrenchment. Tell us about the perspective you share here. There is the historical archive as to what happened and played out in the news and publicly. How did you cover it in the book?
Well, I think I covered it the way it happened. The current administration would recognize that there comes a point where the structure is unsustainable. You're spending so much on salaries that in fact there's no money to do any programs. So you have all the people who are employed, but they can't do what they're employed to do because there's no money left over to do it. And of course, the IMF and other international organizations are quick to point this out. And so it came to a point where there needed to be a restructuring. And discussions were made with the unions, and there were two choices. One was to have a pay cut and a moratorium on increments, and basically just natural, not replacing everybody who retired and that kind of thing. And that was completely rejected. And the other alternative was retrenchment.
Which were the IMF recommendations?
The IMF would have accepted either one, but the unions, and as you can see this time around, again,
playing out real life.
And it is true that very often the people who, I mean, it's not easy, but that was the choice. There was either choice A or choice B, and it wasn't possible to do A. So that was the history of it. It was probably badly handled in that he didn't want to make it political. So he left it to heads of department to choose how they were going to deal with it. And because of that, that was probably an unwise decision taken for good reasons, but not the wisest decision. Because what happens is some heads of department and PSs had their own personal agendas as to how they dealt with it. Some people who were politically opposed to him deliberately chose people who they thought supported him. Others had personal agendas. And so that part should have been overseen better. What happened is that then people said, but you did it right before Christmas. Now, whether that was right or not, there was a reason. He didn't think it right that people would not know going into Christmas whether they would have a job in the new year. Because maybe they would spend money that if they knew they weren't going to have a job, they would budget differently. So he thought people needed to know before Christmas
so that they could budget. So it wasn't heartless. It might have seemed that way.
Yeah.
But there was a reason for it. Now, you could disagree with that, but the reason was he thought that people needed a chance to budget.
Yeah. Now, and looking at the reception to the book, since it was released last week, and you had the official launch of the book, what's been the response so far?
Well, when I decided to publish, when I was ready, I thought, well, I'll do it digitally, because although I have had a book published formally by Kubola, you know, with politics, I didn't think that it would be possible or easy to get it published by a publisher. And I happened to be with Audrey Wallace because she was helping us for the mental health, I've forgotten, anyway. And so I mentioned that I was doing this, and she said, no, you know, he deserves a proper launch. And so we actually decided to go ahead, and she was so helpful in organizing the launch. And I do have to thank Minister of Health for allowing us to go ahead with certain conditions, and Minister of Education for allowing us to use the House of Culture. So what we did is it is available on Amazon, and so
you can get it digitally.
Yeah, to get it digitally.
Yeah,
$9.99 US. And also, because I used a software called Kindle Create, you can also order paperback versions.
Okay.
And so I said to Audrey, well, how many? And she said, well, at least 100. And I said, oh, I don't think we can sell 100. So I ordered 50, and they came just in time. But by then, that 50 has sold. And the next set is going to be here next week. I've just authorized shipping.
And where can people pick up the printed copy?
Well, when it comes in, which is next week, it will be in the country this weekend, but it has to clear through customs, etc. I will have it at my office, Price and Company. I will hope to have some at the UDP headquarters, and I will be approaching bookstores, but I don't have any books to approach them with yet.
Okay.
And so that is, you can also actually online yourself order the printed copy, but for $24.95 US. But then you're going to have to arrange your own shipping. So if you want the printed copy, it's probably best to get it, because I can bring it in bulk. But if you have someone in the US that wants the printed copy, they could order the printed copy and just pay the inland freight in the US.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in and telling us about your process behind writing the biography of Manuel Esquivel. And of course, included with it is your memoir as his spouse. And as you said, the books are available online. Ms. Kathy, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Introducing Edam A cheese, the A+ Dutch cheese to hit the Belizean market. As the name says, it is of A-class quality, the best Dutch cheese in Belize. Edam A cheese is creamier, less salty, and simply more delicious. Don't be left out. Get your A cheese at a supermarket near you. A cheese exclusively distributed by Unitex Company Limited. Call us at 610-3626 or 610-8910. Follow us on Facebook at Unitex Belize.
Bundle the fastest, most reliable, unlimited broadband in Belize with your prepaid or postpaid mobile plan or Netflix. You can bundle your broadband with your prepaid and enjoy 50% off all national calls, plus get SMS and data. Paid plans? Then bundle with any speed and pay only $25 extra monthly to enjoy unlimited smart-to-smart calls, plus 500 minutes, plus 6,300 megabytes of data. Stream unlimited HD movies and TV shows with our broadband, plus the Netflix add-on for only $30 monthly, and enjoy streaming on your laptop, TV, phone, or tablet. Visit a smart showroom near you to sign up or upgrade to the bundle that's right for you. Smart, bringing people together.
Whether you're at home, on the road, at work, or at school, if you see news happening or suspect that something might be up, call or text the Channel 5 News Belize tip line at 672-5555. You don't have to give us your name, just give us the tip. That's 672-5555. Call or text us so we can check it out.
And just like that, we're at the end of our show for this morning.
That's right. 3 different conversations, very different topics. We had the Council of Churches weighing in on their recent positions on the legalization of marijuana, also talking about what seems to be the core of the issue is really being involved in a consultation process with the government. And it was very interesting, I think, to get the clarity that they're not completely opposed to some of the proposals at hand, but they do want to know more.
Absolutely, and it seems as though they have softened their position since last week. It seems there is some level of openness to dialogue and to be able to come up with a decision that will perhaps be in support of the legalization of marijuana if there are certain criteria met that's in favor of their position.
We also want to say thank you to the KHMH and the Social Security Board for coming in and telling us all about the work that they have been doing with the oncology unit. In fact, the funding, as Chandra pointed out, came through from last year, but because it was COVID times, there wasn't much information publicly, but they have been treating patients. They have designated their oncology unit, and there are plans in place to be able to improve upon or build upon the services that they already offer. Very necessary, as he speaks of, 30 to 40 new diagnoses a month.
And it's also a reminder for those to get tested and check yourself. For the woman, check yourself for lumps in your breast. For the men, get your prostates checked. These are very, very important steps in ensuring that there's early detection.
Of course. And we also want to thank Ms. Kathy for coming in and telling us about the biography of Manuel Esquivel, which includes a memoir from her perspective as his spouse. And the biography is called Still Waters. It is available online. It's probably the easiest way to access it as they wait for reprinting of additional books.
Yeah, and I look forward to actually going through this book because it's something that I've been looking forward to. It's not... we haven't discussed much about Sir Manuel Esquivel in our history classes or social studies classes, and so I do look forward to going through this book and learning more about him.
All right. But that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you would like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com.
You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at Open Your Eyes BZ.
And on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.